6:30. I'll call to order the February 6th Parks Commission meeting, City of Dayton. Let's rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and approval of the agenda as printed. Need a motion for that?
I motion.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And the consent agenda, all we have is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, January 2nd. I looked over them. They look good. So just need a motion for those.
I motion.
Or,
I second.
all right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Open forum, limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. State your name and address. No action will be taken, and items will be referred back to staff and or council. Anyone here for? Come on up. Anyone here for open forum?
I'm just here to see what you guys do.
All right. Anyone online for open forum?
No.
All right. Can move on to the council update then. Matt, Councilman Trost.
Thank you. So there's a couple updates from the last month. The city has gone through the fee schedule. It's been approved, edited, and reapproved, and may continue to get edited and approved as things change throughout the year. It's an annual event. It's normal for us to do this. Multiple concept plans, some of which will be presented tonight, were brought up during previous city council meetings. Emergency generators have been approved for purchase for both existing firehouses / city hall / activity centers, which is good. And then next week, we'll be having a work session to talk about what rural feel in Dayton means. I don't want to waylay the meeting, but if you have any thoughts about what that means for parks or about what that just means in general, feel free to email me and I'll bring those up on y'all's behalf at the meeting next week. That starts at 5 p.m. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to the regular meeting then. Item B, the park improvement presentation.
Okay, Paul's going to do the lion's share of this. This is for the 2024 Park Improvements Project. We took some notes from previous council meetings and from public and have incorporated them into some revised designs. We're looking to get input from you guys tonight. So we can move it on to the next stage. We want to try and get these out to bid this year so we can get them constructed and hopefully substantially complete by the end of the year. We're running a little bit behind schedule here, but I think it's still doable. The one for Area 21, the Braeburn Trails neighborhood, we would like to have some pretty good feedback on that. We're trying to do a neighborhood meeting before the end of the month. What was the date?
The 21st.
So we're trying to do it for the 21st. So if we can get some good feedback, we'll start advertising that out through social media and the website and make them aware of that. So, Paul, do you want to step up here or you're going to do it?
Yeah.
See if we can. Is it just on the PowerPoint here?
Sorry.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
There you go. Down there.
I was supposed to be with you last month, but thanks to my 89-year-old father, had COVID running through our house, so I couldn't be here, and I don't think you wanted me here. It wasn't so much fun. But we're going to go through 3 different park sites tonight. As Marty mentioned, we've shown you conceptual ideas, I think, for a lot of them, taken that feedback, staff comments, and tried to incorporate it into a revised master plan. And then the next step would be to get the neighborhood feedback and then ultimately get into construction drawings. We don't have an official name for this one. I know it as PSA 21, Park Service Area 21, but it's adjacent to Braeburn Trails and Sundance Greens. The important thing that you need to understand about this site is the roughly southern half is not currently controlled by the city. So you have not acquired that via park dedication. It was placed at this quadrant because of the ability to gain property from 4 different developments to ultimately create a 12-plus acre park. But as we were doing conceptual design, it's really important that the neighbors understand and you all understand that there will have to be a multi-phased approach on this one because we don't control the development time frame, and without actually owning that property, you won't be able to build on it. So we've looked at a number of different ideas here. The neighbors had some really good feedback. This was the original plan that we had done some time ago as just what type of amenities could be. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but note that that area on the south is an additional 5.37 acres. One of the options coming up will have that same number, and then one is proposing a smaller number, and I'll get into why that might be beneficial. So what we heard from the neighbors was they really liked some of what was going on the other side of Sundance with their small little tot lot and their food trucks. So we explored the idea of, rather than having more parking, which you really don't need for a neighborhood park, most people walk or bike to a neighborhood park. It's not really intended to drive to it, but we always allow that opportunity. The big pink swath going right through the middle, that is the power line easement. We can't do much underneath that, but you can do parking and circulation as long as you're avoiding poles, which we are. You'll see the trail is routed underneath that. It just makes sense to utilize that property rather than leaving it in open turf. So right at the top center of the drawing is 15 stalls of parking with 1 handicap stall, and then a large circle that could be a drop-off, but it could also be wide enough to put food trucks on the side of it. Again, a neighborhood gathering, food trucks will be at Sundance, what are we calling this one? It's not Sundance Woods.
Sundance Greens.
Or Braeburn Trails.
Braeburn Greens.
With the residents.
Whatever we end up naming it, they could advertise it as a gathering spot. In this option, I tried to cluster a lot of the built amenities close to that so that you could create a gathering area. So the half basketball court, potential for double pickleball in that northwest corner, the play area with a couple shelter locations. And when I draw shelter, it could be shade sail, it could be pergola. There's lots of different things that it could be, and you'll see some photos on a different park later. Community gardens came up. Not sure how much demand or interest there is in community gardens, but a lot of communities designate areas where people like my mother, when she was alive, left the farm, moved to Bemidji. She had to have a garden, so she would rent a 20 by 30 plot that was tilled by the municipality, good soil, water nearby, and she could have her garden plot even though she lived in a townhome. They're really low cost. There is some operational maintenance associated with them. But it's an interesting option that some people like. You have to be a little careful about what they look like. You have to have a contract written up that they'll maintain it, that they'll keep the weeds down, blah, 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 to make it a high-quality garden spot. There's room in the northeast corner for something else. I put tennis courts over there. Tennis and pickleball, I don't think we would do one of each, but you could do one court that could accommodate both. So you stripe, in this case, a tennis court, but stripe it for pickleball, and then depending on the demand, changing out the nets. I would not propose both locations. It would be an either or in that scenario. And then the additional property, once that's available, could be open play, informal soccer. When I say informal, meaning not permanent goals, not lighted, not irrigated. Those aren't the neighborhood park amenities. And then the ball field with the backstop, and that literally would just be the backstop, no fence. Loop trails, always important. Try to connect them wherever possible. Maximize connections to the adjoining park areas, or excuse me, housing areas.
Do we have a estimate of when that bottom half of the park's gonna open up? Are we looking at 1 year, 2 year, or should we try and close that loop of the trail until the rest of it comes in 5 years, 2 years?
John, are you aware of any active development planning on either of those? I mean,
On the south, nothing currently.
I can tell you with 100% confidence that the owners of Sundance have a plan for that area. I think you've probably seen it at the council level. It's part of a larger PUD, but with the housing market being what it is, I think it'll be a few more years than they had originally anticipated with the higher interest rates. That's an interesting conundrum. You know, it's currently being utilized as golf course. There's quite a few nicer trees in that area, and I had very loosely developed another plan that moved some of those play areas down into that corner. But the problem, it would be a long time potentially until the neighbors would see that, and I think you're going to get a lot of pushback. So I'm not showing that. I like that idea to be able to utilize mature trees that are currently growing on the golf course, but that's something I would like your input on is, you know, do we continue to pursue the additional 5.37 acres, or do you just take cash in lieu of property dedication, which is the city's right as well? So you could cut the park off at that east-west boundary and just have 7.74 acres if you didn't want a ball field or an informal play area, or you take a portion of it.
I was just saying, close the loop on those bike trails. We can expand those loops later.
Yep. So having an east-west connection.
Yeah.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're just sending them into the dirt to the golf course.
Right. Yeah, and maybe you wouldn't even build some of it in that phase one if it was a path to nowhere. Any other questions on B?
So like the garden plots, would it just be for that neighborhood, or would it be for open for anybody?
Most communities, it's open to the entire community first, and then even beyond that, you know, to Champlin, Maple Grove, Rogers, if the demand was there. But those people tend to have to wait until the actual residents are met. There's a lot of room. Would I have 20 spots there? Obviously, that could be adjusted or increased. You know, I don't know if the market is there or the interest is there. It's not a market because you're charging a very small amount of rent for it, but yeah, there are people that do like to garden. People like myself, I have a big garden plot. It's not as convenient as in your backyard, obviously, but a lot of communities do offer them.
Was this something that one of the neighbours, residents, brought up?
Yep.
They
Other
also
questions?
brought up a large gathering area for the adults and some larger shaded gazebos or pergolas as well.
Yep. So I showed two different shelter locations. I don't think both of those are actual, you know, roofed structures, but one of them could be a seating area with a pergola or a shade sail. I think the next plan, yeah. This option C has that central shelter, and then the walkways leading to that, I could see, you know, stone blocks or benches leading up to it. We'd have to zoom in a little tighter to get to that level of detail, but you know, using those main walkways as the gathering area and a place to sit and enjoy your food from the food trucks. You know, we like the idea of the shelters. They're relatively small, 24 by 24. We did one in Hayden Hills. Getting movable, you know, multi-purpose furniture in there is important, so that can be used for a kid's birthday party or a team sports event gathering or something afterwards. Trying to cluster some of those more heavily used activities. Even for the pickleball, I think that's close enough that, you know, as you're waiting for a court to become available or taking a break, you could utilize that shelter. Try to group the courts together when you can, as long as they're not a conflict. Some people view basketball as a little bit of a nuisance, you know, the bounce, bounce, bounce of the ball. So we have to be a little cognizant of that. Whatever we do, somebody will potentially be unhappy about that element being next to them. It has to go somewhere. So
Pickleball can be a little noisy too.
yeah, pickleball can be. So I mentioned that this, excuse me, this project layout has 3.68 acres of additional, shown in purple, the white mask over it. So if you were to do tennis courts or combined tennis and pickleball, see how it's spanning that line, that would have to be phase 2. The dog park, I would prefer to have that closer to the parking, which doesn't work in this option, but if we acquired all the property, then you could flip it and put the ball field somewhere. We threw the dog park on there. It really, I don't think has really come up, but
It did.
very,
with
very
one of the
popular.
residents.
I have a large dog at home, but we have enough acreage that it's not a problem. You just let it out. But for people that have dogs and need to walk them, if you're interested in that, I would switch it and put it closer to the parking.
And I think the dog park was in that big list of amenities that we have pulled together, so there is some interest, or it has been discussed, that it would be a good thing.
We
That's
heard
something- Would a dog park be something we just open up, or is there like licensing dogs? Would we have to do that, or can we just have a dog park and people bring their dogs and that's fine?
I really don't know.
I mean, I'm not advocating for one or the other. I just don't know if it's a requirement, like at a city level or a liability level.
I bet you would find both. I would imagine some
Yeah.
cities require it
Sure.
and many probably don't. But typically dog parks are
Fairly, I
fenced.
think I had to register a dog,
Yeah.
or my mom did.
I think we moved away from registering dogs in
Mhm.
the city.
We
It
did.
used to be required.
Yeah, I think we moved away from that, but this would be a fenced area, like you're saying, so that limits the liability a little.
Just a short one, like 3 or 4 foot high.
4 foot typically. A lot of times there's a fairly complex gating system, so you have one gate that can
Yeah,
open
like
and
a
then you walk into a
airlock.
smaller vestibule, if you will,
Yeah.
before another gate opens so that dogs can't break out unattended.
And then are they kind of self-maintained, or is that something where you'd expect a slight maintenance cost to the city going in to clean up what residents might not?
You want to add that to your
Maybe that's
bookkeeping?
getting more into the
Yeah.
weeds than we need to.
Low man on the totem pole gets that job. I mean, they're
Well, thank
supposed to
you.
be,
Ideally, it's not a non-issue, I suppose.
in a bigger site like this, you probably, on a small, like, think apartment building, dog park, it would be artificial turf and some ag lawn.
Yeah, I have
underneath,
seen
free
that
draining
in the
water
city.
there. You're supposed to pick up the solids and then the liquids drain through. On this one, I would imagine the turf would be poor and spotty, but just expected.
Sure. And with that smaller acreage, do we get the remainder? Are we able to just draw our own, instead of 5.37 acres, this plan is 3.68. So we're getting less parkland from that development. Do we get that made up in cash, or
Yep.
we can just draw the lines we like and
Within reason,
developers-
we would want to work with the developer.
We work
and
with them.
Tell them
Okay.
that there's a new plan, and, these lines are probably out there somewhere
Sure.
between planning staff and myself working with the developers, but
So there's some
it is
flexibility.
your option you can do all cash, you can do all land, you can do.
Or a combination.
A
Okay.
mix of both. And that would be the benefit, right? That you would not acquire as much land, but you would get a little.
Yeah, if we don't
more.
have as much use for it, they could build on it and we could make up for it.
My only concern there is all the potential people living in that area. There's not going to be a lot of parks in that area. We're not talking 100 or 200 people, we're talking more than that.
Yeah.
So we'd want all that park area.
Yeah,
Maybe
and just to service that
a
whole area.
secondary playground area on that southern half.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but Brayburn Trails has its own private play area. It's not a city park, but it's a private residence, part of their HOA that they have.
Right.
So they have one. That's the thing, why the gentleman that was here last meeting was like, we don't need a playground, we already have one.
So-
Right? But,
Fair.
but this is servicing more than just that
Right.
neighborhood, so I don't disagree with that, but just as a reminder.
Right.
Yep.
And that neighborhood is paying HOA fees to support that.
Yep.
So technically, they could close it to non-Rayburn residents.
I think there's actually signage up there saying that this is a private park or
Yep.
whatever.
Are there any things being shown that you don't want to do or want to talk about doing differently? Neighborhood parks have similar amenities, but I saw in the meeting minutes from last week that one of the residents had said that They wanted unique. They didn't want it all to be the same. That's a catch-22 from a design perspective, because 4 more residents might come up and say, well, why don't we have a pickleball? Hayden Hills has pickleball. Or why don't we have a pergola because LCC, you know. Those conversations, you as the commission and at the council level need to be firm in whatever direction you're going. I don't think they have to be the same. We try really hard working with the playground vendors to put new and different stuff in the playground itself. And that's outside of this design level. We'll have a cool playground everywhere, but, you know, pickleball is very popular. Do you want it in every park? Do you need it in every park? Is half-court basketball enough, or should you do full court some places? And those are the types of things that, from a pure design standpoint, I can fit it in there, but what do you and your residents want? I would argue that a full basketball court, you know, 85 feet up and down, 5-on-5 doesn't happen very often. So generally half-court is ample. But some communities take a different approach and put a full court in, and maybe they have 6 goals on it instead of just 2 at the ends. Even on the half court, we try to do either 2 goals opposite or rotating ones that more than one person can play, even if they're not going up and down the court. Pickleball is a significant expense. We're probably looking at $80,000 for a double pickleball. But the playground makes up the majority of the project costs, that and the trails.
So if you have a tennis court that can also do pickleball, then does the price go up even more then, or is it about the same?
So the dimensions for pickleball versus tennis, you can fit 2. If you oversize a single tennis court a little bit, you can do 2 pickleball courts, but you have to run it opposite ways, which gets a little complicated with the goal assemblies or the net assemblies. Or you have the option of a double tennis and 3 pickleball, but there again, you know, you can't have a post in the middle of your tennis court, so then they have to be portable goals. You have to design the lines so that they're visible, but not so similar that you get confused when you're playing.
And the residents that have to swap them out or call Marty and say, hey, come swap this court for us until the garden while you're here.
Right. And pick up the dog poop.
Yeah, pull the weeds.
Probably the dog poop would be a higher priority.
Oh, the dog
The dog poop, yeah. And it's windy too.
Since we don't have official pickleball courts in Dayton, and with the way things are going, it looks, you know, if we're looking 20 to 30 years out, wouldn't that be probably one of the top priorities, is, you know, an opportunity like that, just with how the popularity and people going everywhere else to play it? I think there would be a lot of value to taxpayers to see that, hey, we actually have our own pickleball courts in the community now.
We have two
We do.
places
Yeah,
of
we
pickleball
have
courts in the
2.
community currently. Both River Hills and Hayden Hills
Hills, yeah.
Yep.
have pickleball courts.
Take that back.
We have 3.
Okay. So I've only played over at the one in Champlin here. What's the park right?
Weathers Park?
What's that?
Weathers Park?
No, Tony Galloway?
The one that's
No.
No, Weathers.
like not even a
Yeah,
mile.
on the other side of River.
Yeah,
Road.
Is it
it's on
Weathers?
Valley Forge there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been great, but that's Champlin, so okay, I didn't realize those other 2 did, so I take that
Hayden
back.
Hills has some nice new ones.
Are they? Where are they by?
Right off the main road, right at the corner when you
There's
come
even
from
parking.
the south.
Earwood.
It's parking for both of them.
That even maybe be something for like beautiful, like something to when we talk about like City of Dayton Facebook page when we get to the actual spring after this fake spring, like putting out, you know, it's just so people are educated, because I don't know anyone in my neighborhood that, except for you, that knows that they're there. Because everyone that I've played with in my neighborhood's either played at Daytona or at the place in Champlin. So again, maybe we're just talking to the wrong people. So
I started my landscape architecture career in 1993, and when I first was involved in park and rec planning, we did tennis courts just as a matter of commonality, or, you know, every neighborhood park got a tennis court for about 5 years, and then for the next 20 years I hardly ever put in a tennis court because tennis just died. You know, Andre Agassi and the popular U.S. tennis players weren't popular anymore. Tennis was gone for a long time. I hear it's making a comeback. We did get at least one resident that specifically asked for tennis.
Do we have tennis at River Hills or?
No.
No.
Okay, no? So that's where, that would make sense then, so we've got all
Right.
people covered.
Right. And the only difference, well, there's many differences, but the biggest difference between tennis and pickleball is a double tennis is probably $150,000 instead of 80. Extra high fencing, much bigger dimensions. So, but again, the idea of one court surface that could accommodate both, even though there's some challenges to it, it just, are you going to spend $250,000 to have two separate courts? I don't think that makes sense. But
As far as your design layout, is there any way we could swap that dog park with the double tennis court in the interim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if,
That way it's there. And that was a request from them.
the only challenge that I would raise, it's not pushing back, what I would raise is that security, kids scared of dogs, dogs jumping on kids, do we need some separation? You know, could the dog park instead go where the ball field is and shift the ball field south, or not have a ball field? I would want to create a little bit more horizontal separation between the dogs and the playground.
I agree.
Even though mom or dad might walk both the dog and the kids to the park, and dad go do that while they play on the playground, I think just a little bit of space might be warranted, so they're not, right across the trail from each other. And that power line easement provides a nice buffer. The other thing we didn't mention, but the big blue line there is a snowmobile trail that follows that power easement, and we're told that it's going to remain. So we need to allow for snowmobiles going through the park. There was one comment, I don't know if it was from this group or about curvilinear trail versus straight trail. You could make arguments for both, but there's one of each, depending on B or C, whatever you look at.
Well, if the park's going to be utilized otherwise in the winter, the curves could be nice to slow snowmobiles down a little bit.
I don't see the snowmobiles using that same corridor just because of the studded tracks and everything. You wouldn't want them on the trails, so they need to be off.
Right, I mean, just anywhere else in the park,
Yeah.
in the same area, I'm saying it would slow the sleds down a little
Yeah,
bit,
yeah.
which could be beneficial.
Yep,
Yeah, they wouldn't, minimal crossing of the trails.
correct. Obviously, the connections to the southwest and southeast are just, we have to have an arrow somewhere into whatever new neighborhood forms. But that gets worked out with the developer and the planning staff as we go.
I'm still hung up on the snowmobiles going through a park and through the neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't know how that decision, is that, how do snowmobiles get approved through the council? Is it just something that historically has been that way?
It's historically been that way.
I know Sundance
In my
is,
opinion on this park, you wouldn't want it going across the center of the park.
Oh.
I'd make the snowmobile go around.
Kids are playing and making snow angels and
Well, they go through the
whatnot.
power line easement, that's why it's there in the first place.
yeah,
But if we built a trail around it on our parkland, that's something the city would be within their right to do. Otherwise, we would need to ask the developer to give us an easement, or to give the trail maintainers the easement.
right.
But yeah, what happened? Yeah.
Just be mindful you put trees on the outside of the walk paths. If you're gonna have them go all the way around the outside, which is fine, you'd have to make sure, be mindful we put trees there. You don't wanna put a tree where you want them to go.
But you're still having a snowmobile go right through a neighborhood at all times of the day and night.
They can do it right now.
It's valid.
They used to
complain?
do it when I was a kid and lived in Dayton, and
That
they used
was
to go up and down the
different, though.
street. I lived in one of the only neighborhoods in Dayton back in the
That's
day.
the rural feel.
It's the rural field, a snowmobile going through the
Exactly.
park in the neighborhood.
It may change 20
Yeah.
years from now.
Yeah.
I mean, Champlin used to allow snowmobiles.
Yep.
Okay.
On the ball fields, is it possible, Marty, I don't remember, maybe 4 or 5 months ago when the CDAA came and talked to us? Was it from a funding perspective, if we add ball fields, is that something we could get them to, or they want their own stuff?
They don't want to have their competitions in the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods don't want to have those
Okay.
competitions there either. I think the traveling teams have problems finding these places and stuff, and parking is always a problem for that then. So these neighborhood parks aren't the ideal solution for that issue.
That's what I figured, and I know they
Yeah.
need their grass infields and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
just thought it was worth the chance to help fund it.
CDA would use it for 7 and 8-year-olds, so
Oh.
that's kind of a typical neighborhood park. So. I
Would
mean,
they help with the
that-
funding on that? Because they had mentioned that they would be interested in helping with funding.
They,
The funding for this is pretty minimal, so as Paul was alluding to, it's a backstop and 2 benches
Okay, that's it.
in an irrigated field, but that, yeah, there's not a lot that goes into it.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't need an outfield fence because nobody can hit it that
Yeah.
far at 7 and 8.
Right.
The ball hardly ever leaves the
I was
infield.
gonna say.
If we were to schedule it for CDAA activity, then we would want the actual infield to be more regulation for that age group as opposed to just a small little ag lime area like we did at Hayden Hills. And the irrigation, I think Marty's had some discussions about that. Typically, we don't irrigate neighborhood parks, but
Aren't we
the
talking
la-
about irrigating neighborhood parks now, Marty? We talked about that a little bit, city
yeah,
council.
we're
meeting.
starting to look at that as being more of a thing that we're going to do. We're looking at existing parks like Hayden Hills and stuff, Sundance and Iron Gardens out there. We're putting in irrigation systems, we're getting costs for those. And I think what we're finding is the neighborhoods, they like to have their grass all green and stuff. They don't want to go to a public playfield that isn't kept up to the same standard as their yards. So that's kind of, I think that's where we're going. And I know that we've always tried to do it unirrigated in the past with some success, but recent years have shown that that's really difficult to maintain with the drought conditions and stuff. So I think that going to the irrigation is going to be inevitable.
Well, the last question I would have for you is, for a neighborhood meeting, do you want them to see any and all options? Do you want to pick one that's obviously preferred and only show them that? What we typically would do a visual dialogue, we'd put together some more boards that have photos of some of the seating elements, the shade elements, things like that. Not that they can say, yes, we have to have that because that's budget driven, but just a way to get conversation going. But do you want them to see all of them or not?
I like the options that you have on them. I think both residents that did show up, they were looking for some kind of restroom facilities, because it is a long walk back to their house. Not looking for anything else for Marty to do, but some kind of hidden toiletries. Again, I like the options, so if we could have the options up there, maybe not necessarily a design, they can kind of get a priority of what they're most interested in. If they want a ball field, or just a big green space, or the garden.
Okay. I think that's a
Yeah.
valid point. I don't think we want them to think that it's a design by committee thing, but by having multiple options, we can get their input and then refine it into one. The restroom thing, absolutely, it's not going to be a flush and,
No.
hand wash toilet type of situation, but it could be either porta potties or a compostable toilet.
Yeah.
I do a lot of work with Wright County Parks, and they're using the compostable toilets. And
Yeah.
A little more substantial, obviously a different price point than a
Yeah.
porta potty rental. But
It's something that we're starting to look at with, it was brought to my attention by Three Rivers Park District. They're starting to move to those sort of things at their trailheads and stuff like that. So it's a more of a permanent structure there. It could look better in a park rather than having the biffs all over the place. But it comes down to cost and what you want to pay your money on.
what about the commission's decision on taking all the parkland possible or shrinking it? Even the reduced scope option up on the screen right now, I think we can comfortably fit the amenities that we're talking about. But to Dave's comment, you get one chance to get the land. So, but having land that you can't utilize for whatever reason because phase 2 is unlikely for X amount of years, that's a tough one.
What's the advantage of only taking a smaller portion of the land than what we originally asked for?
Just being able to get some of it in fee versus land.
What's the cash on an acre and a half? How much money are we talking? It's an acre and a half difference, right about, right? Over. But what's the price on lieu? So it's not that much money. 3,200 an acre?
Yeah.
So you're talking like $5,000? They'll pay
Take
for
the
1 year of
land.
PIF
Yeah.
rentals.
What is that?
It-
What is
well,
your
it's-
current park dedication fee?
Can't remember.
You won't regret in taking the land regardless of the money that you get today. Some city might change in 12 years. If Holly want to do it, at least they have the land to do it.
I would add, for sports programming, say, you have baseball, softball, and soccer, or other field sports that meet at the same time or play at the same time, it's easier to have two separate facilities. So, thinking of this park is going to be there forever, it's easier. If we're going to avoid a conflict, it's better to do that now than it is to try to figure out how to fix that later on.
Yeah. And I make certain assumptions before we generate these plans, but my assumption that created what you have in front of you tonight was that these were not scheduled for athletic use. Scheduled CDAA use. If that's true, the parking number probably wants to go back up a little bit, and the size of the field, or at least the dimensions for the field. If it's only 7 and 8, then we just have to change the actual infield dimensions a little bit. But for like soccer, I think one of these, C had a full-size soccer, and those might be the same. I thought I had one that had like a 3/4. Actually, I think all of these are 3/4 size. So rather than 360 by 225, it's whatever 3/4 of that, 270 by 160. So there is room. We just have to push things out a little bit further. But that hasn't been the way it's been done recently. But a lot of communities do that. In Maple Grove, they scheduled the neighborhood parks for practices, especially some games. Decision forthcoming?
What's everybody's thought on taking the land or taking $5,000?
The land.
And,
There you go.
I don't disagree.
yeah,
You get one chance to get land.
yeah.
Any other questions?
In your experience having community meetings, presenting 3 options like that, is that too many options maybe? Like,
We would gloss over the first one because that was a previous version and say, okay,
Okay.
based on some feedback we
Okay.
got and what we heard from residents, we're going to focus on these 2, and then I think it's fine.
And I think a lot of the stuff that we've done in the past, they're more keyed in on what the playground equipment is going to be as well. That seems to be a big point for these neighborhood parks.
well,
And that level of, that's done by a separate entity, the playground vendor itself, so
Okay.
we wouldn't have that. We might be able to generate some pictures of
Yeah, that's what I'm
different
thinking.
things that we've done, but
And then get them to vote on what, do you want a zip line or do you want this, that, and the other? That's how we've done it in the past, and so they feel engaged in that
Sure.
part of the park.
Something
Yeah.
preemptively, maybe to go look at that other park and see what amenities they already have there, and to remind the individuals that do show up, because there's other land has been built, that this is for 4 communities coming together in one park, not just
Right.
one community. So there may be some duplicates that are important. Like we may have slides at both of them, because
yeah. You always have
are fun.
slides, always
Yep.
have
Yeah.
swings,
Yep.
but,
I think just stating that's important though, because
yep.
it's easy to get forgotten.
Before we jump to the lease, also on your boards, can we have our listed standard equipment? We're gonna have benches out there, we're gonna have trash receptacles out there, we're gonna have dog poo out there.
Sure.
And then my last concern is colors. I know you flashed a screen with like a neon green and brown, but I think we agreed on the city colors for all the parks to show that it was an actual city park.
Okay.
That would have been in the early years, 21, I think it was, that we did that. Go back in the notes to review.
When we did Hayden, I know that colors were a big conversation. We spent quite a lot of time talking about that.
I don't.
Well, I guess there are new people here from that time. We could have a review of colors, park colors. But
Yeah, I think there's been several different conversations on colours. I know, there's certain people who just didn't want to have the same colours in all the parks because that automatically makes them look the same, and they want to have everyone have its individual personality through colours and different equipment. We have done things with the city colours in parks. Some of the shelters, we've always gone for the blue roofs and that kind of thing. So there's some things that you can tie down back into the colours. I think if you have those same colours reflected in every park, it might be a little bit, cookie cutter park type feel.
I would agree. However, we wanted to signify that it was a city-owned park, and that's why we chose the colors at that time. Again, we can change our minds, however, meet about it, discuss about it. Maybe somebody
Signage.
wants red
We could do signage too,
signage, yeah.
although that costs money.
Yeah, I think you could definitely argue both ways. When I did work for the city of Maple Grove, Vern Manning was the superintendent. It was green and brown, tan and green. Never varied, and it would have been nice to have a little bit of variety. So that tan and green ended up a little dated. So these things are scheduled to last, 25 plus years, so they're around a long time, and color, you don't want to, pick the turquoise that is, the color of the year from Pantone either, because that can look pretty dated also. So, maybe the post could always be a blue and you mix it up from there, or maybe it's those two colors and one other accent. There's ways, absolutely.
Yeah, you have a predominant colour, and then you can have some secondary colours on top of that.
So before we jump to Elsie, I want you to note the image on the screen, because that's the greenest I've ever seen that grass.
Photoshop is great.
We're going to go, we're going to start here, and then I'll go back. So we're already up to phase 3 of Elsie Stevens, and the line work that's shown there shows everything that's been built to date, kind of faded back. It shows some of the master plan elements, like the playground and the barn remnants, and some of that even further faded back. But what I want you to focus on tonight are the areas circled with the red dashed circles, and then the red line work. How much do we have? 500,000?
Yeah.
500,000 allocated. Of that, a significant portion needs to go to the bridge, right there. This was scheduled to be put in the 2022 plan, and we encountered some significant obstacles, change orders, and we ended up pulling it from the project. The Three Rivers Park District Bridge was also supposed to go in, and when they saw the potential change orders that were being discussed, they opted to pull that out. We won't go into the long history there, but basically we were over the barrel with a contract, and it just made sense to remove it and put it into the next phase. And Three Rivers decided to just pick theirs up as part of a 2025?
Yeah, I think it's
25 or 26.
It might come forward a little bit because we're trying to incorporate it into the turn lanes that we're doing this year.
Yeah.
It may come sooner rather than later. It's a cheaper option for them.
So they have 3 different bridges that they were going to group together and try to get some better pricing. So what we want to look at today, to my earlier comment, this area really wants to have some irrigation to make the turf come back in a reasonable fashion. It was originally sodded in phase 1. That sod has struggled with the drought years that we've had. It faces northeast, which is its only saving grace. If it faced southwest, it would be even crispier. But how big that irrigation area remains to be seen, but the biggest benefit is we have power and a well in this area that we can pretty easily tap into. So adding irrigation after the fact, not a big deal at all, relatively cost effective, and this this is such a great seating area and performance area, we want to make that turf work a little better.
When we talk about cost, what are we looking at to irrigate? And does that come out of the parks money or Marty's pocket?
Marty's personal pocket, I think. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Isn't that what we talked about, Marty?
Well, no, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're only worried about the red circles and not the irrigation.
Well, no, the irrigation has to be,
I think irrigation should be part of this project as well. Because it needs to get done. It's not, I haven't got anything in budgeted for my stuff on this. So I was hoping that we could include it in as part of phase 3 of the project. I don't think it's going to be a huge number because we've got the well and everything there. It's going to be just pulling in some pipe and stuff like that and heads. One thing I'm not sure about, talk about budget, I think that the money that we took out of the previous 2022, there's some money left over that we could put to the bridge on this as well.
yes. Yeah.
So that would ease that up a little bit.
So as we go through these different potential project areas, be thinking about prioritization, because the budget, even though it's 500,000 plus probably another 200 for what didn't get spent in the 2022 project, it can't buy everything that's on the screen. So we know that we want some signage off of River Road as part of the turn lanes, so I think that's a high priority. Marty is committed to Hennepin County to closing this access off except for special functions, so a gate, and there's some sketches of what that gate could look like in the packet. The irrigation is a fairly small amount, and the bridge. So those 4 probably for sure, and then the 2 larger potential projects, modifying the band shell to have some coverage over it and potentially additional seating. And I think Mr. Solonic is here for that very reason, right? Because this is an important project to him and something he wants to see move forward. And then ultimately, we talked last time about possibly doing some things up in this part of the park to draw people to L.C. Stevens. We have the future river access that's being done by a different consultant, currently under a separate project. So that's not, it's planned, but it's not part of what I'm here to talk about. So this would be, somewhere where we could spend whatever was remaining. But this is a big number too, so I'm going to go to...
So we have roughly 700,000.
Roughly.
Roughly. So where are we at, guesstimation-wise, with the bridge, with the shelter for Scott, with the closing of the roads, and then the other sign? What are we kind of looking at here? Are we looking at like 20,000, or are we looking at like 120?
Can't answer that until we know more about what this
That shelter
performance
looks like.
area might be and how grand Scott's plans are. That's going to eat up a lot of it, certainly. The bridge is $250,000 plus. This could eat up everything else remaining if you really wanted it to, if you did some of what the photos show. So what's illustrated here, this is the current stage, and that was designed, there is power there, it was designed to accommodate a small band, a small performance, but no, you're not going to get Chicago and all their horns and the backup singers and everything on the stage that's there. This is really just an overlook. It's not meant to be used for the performance. Obviously, topography and the slope that everything is built into factors into that. We think we can build a little bit larger paved area out in front of that current stage. Probably has to be steps down off the trail, but this could come in at grade. Actually, I'm not sure if these can be the same height. If so, then the access happens here. Otherwise, we'd have to come in at a lower elevation there. And if we were going to commit to a larger stage and do more events here, then some additional seating. So basically an extension of the stone blocks that were there, mimicking that same thing. And then ultimately, even more people can sit up in this area, although you start to get a long ways away from, the performers, but still certainly be able to hear and see what's going on. So this was a real quick idea. This one happens to be showing a shade sail, so a tensile fabric, something like, whoops. This is over a pool, but this idea, or this is a much bigger performance area than what we're showing, but imagine 2 of those shade sails coming together. You could also do something that has more of a actual metal iron infrastructure with fabric covering that. These other pictures are more for the picnic pavilion, built-in concrete permanent bags, the idea of built-in grills and seat walls, things like that. But for the performance area, those 3 on the left is some of the ideas that are. And I don't know, Scott, if that's what you were envisioning. And
Something similar to that. I also would like the shelter on the right. Something similar to that for people to sit in, because currently there's nothing there. And just to throw it out there, pergolas. At $22,000 that was spent at L.C. Stevens, might as well take a chainsaw and cut it down. They're worthless. The only thing that they're, I guess, beneficial for would be if someone's going to have a wedding, that's what you're putting out there for. Because it basically, in my opinion, it serves no purpose.
so the pergola right above the word Stevens there.
Right. I just don't like it. I would have never supported the thing, but let's be from that kind. As far as the, and in my opinion, this is something that the whole community can use. Where, personally, I think we're going a little bit backwards, and I know all your community neighborhoods like their community parks, but because we're putting all of those community parks in there, the Grand Central Park is waiting. We're spending a group of money on these parks. I mean, every one of the neighborhood parks is $500-600 grand. So where, in my opinion, if we cut the neighborhood parks back a little bit and put the ball field and, get all your main amenities in a bigger park. I understand some people got to drive, but that's just the way it is. Otherwise, it's going to be 10-20 years before we get that major park. I mean, I personally think Dayton would get more use out of a splash pad than they will tennis courts. That's me. So in my opinion, if we cut the neighborhood park cost-wise down a little bit and put more into this, to me, the community's going to get more use out of this. No, there's no splash pad in there just yet, but we're still getting there.
This L.C. Stevens Memorial Park has been going on close to 10 years, I think.
Oh, it's all of that.
Oh, yeah.
From the master planning I'm talking
I
about.
think
when
I
it first
started
did.
clean up in there in 2014. That's when I first started in there.
And we talked about some interesting ideas, using the silo as an observation tower and maybe using the bridge, or excuse me, the barn remnants for something, and does the horse barn actually get saved or not, and what could the granaries be used for? This is phase 4 to 14, I suppose, but there was going to be in the master plan a large play area. I suppose that could be a splash pad, but not without a lot more parking, so we'd have to account for that. Right now, there's a master plan for a conference. A what?
The conference center.
Conference center or a wedding venue or some type of fairly significant building, and then this area would be converted into the parking for that.
Well, that master plan you keep talking about, this council has never seen that.
It was in a Parks Commission packet last fall, because we met at L.C. Stevens and walked
Yeah.
it. And I think that's, so I guess the question I have is when we walked that, afterwards we came back and talked, Marty, and I thought we talked about moving the performance stage over to where the barn remnants were
That was-
versus putting them here. I'm just curious, because I feel like this commission met, put a bunch of ideas,
An idea.
and now we're back to what it was before all their ideas were in it. So that I don't feel like this plan is represented, unless the commission disagrees with me, but
Nope,
I
agree.
don't think that this plan that you're showing on the screen is representative of what the commission came up with and did all the work for at the end of last year. Is
I
that how the
agree.
commission?
I agree with you, man.
There's no apathy or anything like that that we discussed.
Is it
I
kind
must have been at that meeting, but I'm not remembering.
Yeah, I remember.
Well, I think
we
it's
talked about
there. It's
going-
just real grayed out. I think.
But
right?
yeah, but the grayed out places aren't even what you guys had talked about, right?
Okay.
Correct.
I think that we talked about the river overlook with the silo and stuff like that. We talked about the barn, having a band shell on the backside of the barn there that faces out to the river, I believe, yeah?
Using the two silos for like a restaurant or something like that
Food and
there, like
beverage.
food and beverage area. Yeah.
Yeah.
We removed they had removed the park altogether. Like the playground, that whole area, that was supposed to be, well, based upon what the committee had talked about, that was band shell area. The whole area was one big band shell.
So that is actually on the drawing underneath here, just the really grayed out.
But that's not where we had it when we talked about it.
No, this was,
The ideal place
that
for
is
the
where
band.
it was.
No,
Ideal
not
place
when this committee talked about it. From the original master plan that you did 10 years ago, whenever you did it, I don't disagree that that's what you're showing here. What I'm saying is that was put together 10 years ago. This commission got together and met at the end of last year and asked for a bunch of updates and changes to it, and they've all disappeared. And we're back to where we were at the master plan that was originally built, correct? This is the original master plan, no?
No, this is modified significantly from the original master plan.
Okay. Then maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like they all feel the same way, so I just wanted to.
The original master plan was done by my previous office. I don't even have that line work. So this line work was done in advance of, it was last fall's meeting. We talked about some of the ideas. We showed pictures of seating areas in a, not a corn crib, but a granary. So there was talk about that. There was talk about using this for the overlook. I am not remembering that we were proposing to relocate the performance area, because you have so much money invested down here with power and seating. If that ultimately is the goal, we can certainly explore that.
We
First-
talked about moving it over towards the grain bin and the potential restaurant area. The barn there is what we had talked about that night.
Okay. This will never be a restaurant.
Okay.
You-
No, we were just throwing out hopes and dreams that
Right.
night, and
But this
that was
will
one
be-
of the.
There were no
concession
wrong
area
answers
is maybe
to
a more
that.
appropriate
there you go.
term. No one,
There you go.
we're not thinking of a
Thank you.
Chipotle going in there,
Yeah.
but
No.
maybe somewhere you could sell beverages under a canopy, a semi-solid structure that's not your easy up tent.
Sure.
That's-
We had talked about the grain bin potentially being essentially turning into a cider house or something like, different types of options with what's there to keep what's there and build more around that area rather than the side that's been kind of the designated wedding area or whatever. We talked about moving over there and talked about also on that side kind of doing that as the amphitheater for music and having it go back towards the water rather than having it go up towards the city or the future homes that'll be across the street from there. To think that the music would go down towards the water rather than back up into the community. Those were the discussions. We didn't. I don't. Nothing was like finalized or anything. But that was kind of. Is that kind of sum it up?
Yep.
We
Don't
did
you guys
talk-
think the music on the river is, that's why you're there? To me, the best place for the performance area is where it is. Now, the whole design of it could be, I personally would like a sloped thing going down to the stage. I mean, we used to have all that dirt on Territorial. It could have been moved over there and made the whole thing kind of a bowl type thing so that you could have elevated seating going down into it and overlook the river. All the people would be overlooking the river just like you have it. I mean, unfortunately, it's all flat and that's
No,
going to be hard to do.
Scott, you have the topography that you're asking for. I mean, it's there.
It goes up maybe 15 feet.
Right?
Yeah.
No,
You've seen the one at Elk River, right?
Yeah.
That's the ideal design, a nice little bowl-shaped deal that drops down like 30, 40 feet.
Okay.
We don't have it, I mean, we,
Yeah, you don't have that much topography. You have the floodplain issue, but this is, if you could turn the camera around, the $1 million view is towards the river right here.
Yes,
I mean, there is no
absolutely.
better view in all of Dayton than when you're sitting under the pergola, which I happen to like, but
Yeah.
potato, potato.
It's great during the day, but at night you can't see the $1 million view and the amphitheater and the music and the lights are going off. We were concerned about the neighbors, and that's why we had it face the other way.
Okay. I'd have to go back and look at the meeting because
Just-
I don't remember some of those comments. I apologize if.
No, we just noted with the additional housing that's supposed to go across the street there, and that's why we had flipped it around, doing the opposite of what Champlin has. That's the only reason why we discussed that, because we didn't want to have it going, people trying to build houses or whatever's going to happen across the street there, and then knowing that there's going to be live music when they're trying to put kids down, et cetera, from, 7 to 10 p.m.
And there's no reason that we can't have a bigger performance area in that thing for bigger bands and big event, for bigger audiences, and keep this one as it is for smaller bands and stuff like that. So as we develop it out, that is still a potential in there. We're just not showing it at the moment. And the things with the silos and stuff, we discussed that, but I don't think that would be feasible on this part of the project, this phase of the project, just because of the dollars involved with that. So I think that we can incorporate those ideas into the master plan.
Yep.
And then work those into the budget, but they're going to be bigger budget items than what we've got available to us, especially with the bridge that we need to get in here to connect those trails up.
The challenge for a design professional is, you get somebody paid to give their opinions. I think it would be a huge mistake to not have the main performance area down in this area. I mean, this is the $1 million view, and with what you've already spent, this part of the site has a unique amenity to it, but I don't think that this offers anything close to what the easterly area offers. That's my opinion, but that's what you paid me to provide in a lot of ways. I think that this could be something, but I know the dollars that have been spent in phase one and getting the power, getting some lighting in this area. It's very easy to add it. It's really expensive to recreate that. And you talk about the topography. There is no topography up in this area. This is relatively flat. So it's not that you can't have a flat performance area, but generally people like to look down in it.
if the barn and silos weren't there, you'd forget about it in 10 years.
Yeah. And this horse barn, Marty loves it. I think it should be raised or burned. The stone remnants.
Get a lot of money for that wood, are you kidding me?
The stone remnants that are here will be challenging to use structurally. They're crumbling pretty good. I just really question from an aesthetic standpoint if these grain bins and the silo are what we want to hang our hat to. Again, this is the $1 million view.
And I didn't want to waylay the conversation. I just want to make sure they were heard. Like,
Yeah.
I have no preference at this point in time. They spent a night out there looking through everything and then came back and talked about it. So I just want to make sure they were heard. That's all.
Okay, so I was not at the meeting that you did your actual site visit. So if there was discussions happening there, I did not hear those, but.
I think we discussed it at the meeting, at the following meeting when we got back here and
Yeah,
had a
okay.
briefing on that.
And we're not saying that scratch the circles that you have.
Okay, it's in addition to.
Phase 4, 5, 10,
Yeah.
you know, it's gonna be a 20-year park, I'm sure, and building process.
Yeah,
It's just,
okay.
our thoughts were not reflected, so thank you, Matt, for bringing that up.
I'm just panicking back here thinking, what didn't I hear when it was, but if it was at that meeting that you did the site visit, I did not hear that. But I think it's really important that you understand programmatically what type of events, how often events are. I know they've tried to do movies in the park, and those are highly dependent on the weather because we don't have any cover for it. You know, how many people realistically, even dreaming big, are we trying to account for here? And then, of course, the parking and the seating, and you know, that has to be really high on the list to understand just how big of events can Dayton support here.
Same thing can be said about a conference center there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that conference center is a big number, right?
Yeah.
We all know that. You look at Rogers did what they did on Main Street, and the old public works director went around with his handout and got a bunch of funding, people naming rights and things like that, and it's pretty cool. This could be way cooler than that, just because of the view. But that's, I don't know, $8 million, $10 million.
So to bring us back, you're questioning our thoughts on the red circles that we have out there and the money and the funds to be
Yep.
spent for, and the type of shelter down at the water or roofing.
You're looking for our priorities, right? Like, I'd agree that signage on the new entrance is going to be key. The old one has to be shut. There's currently a big sign that says this park is being developed in memory of Elsie Stevens. Does that move to the new entrance? Does that go away when we have a sign with the
when we have the
logo?
actual sign
Okay.
in there. And I have to check out legally if we have to have
Include that verbiage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I've always wondered
bought
about
the
that.
property, I think there was some requirement of what the language was on the sign in memorial,
I don't
in
know
memory
about
of
that.
Elsie Stevens. I think there was something in
That's the way
there.
it was purchased, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I would agree with the signs.
I think the real question
And the
for you
bridge.
to all answer, if we go back to the, sorry, don't know. If we go back to the plan, I think the four that we talked about, the irrigation, the bridge, the signage, and the gate can all fit comfortably in the monies, and then it's a either or. So do you want to pursue an expansion of the performance area, or would you rather spend that money towards developing a new social node that might have the picnic shelter on the right, and when we say picnic shelter, we're thinking, something big enough to be rented for weddings or family reunions or corporate events, things like that. Don't have a lot of parking in that area. There's some room to add some, but it's kind of an either or. And I don't know that the budget pays for all of either of those. We have to spend some more time noodling on what that is, but we can look at alternates or other funding, pushing off future phases to be able to, I don't know. Marty will have to dip into the coffers, talk the council into dipping into the coffers, but.
My 2 cents is to what you said earlier. We've spent a lot of money in that area already. Let's continue and finish it up nice. My 2 cents versus, half of a picnic grill volleyball court area. So I would say continue building.
And the improvements we're thinking of some kind of shade and the extended seating. Was that kind of the gist of the improvements in that red circle down by the water?
Just to extend the stage area.
Some type of expansion of
in
the paving.
Right, okay.
Potential expansion of the seating, and then some type of cover or
What do
infrastructure.
we have there for power right now? Like,
We got stacks of power.
A lot.
so like that'd be enough for a band, Scott? Like,
Oh,
we're not
yeah.
worrying
Oh,
about
yeah.
generating? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And food trucks.
More than enough.
Because I know they usually want this many circuits with this many amps, because
Yeah.
you don't
No,
want your
there's
bases
plenty of
blowing.
stuff down there. We got camper
Okay.
hookups down there and all
Okay.
kinds of stuff. So.
Sweet.
I think it's a 30 and 50 amp
Yeah.
panel, like you would
So
have
those
in
food
an
trucks
RV.
running their generators are just doing it because they wanted their generators.
The food trucks can't get down to that area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they'd be away from the performance.
I just remember a bunch of generators running during the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
Do you go back to the map real quick? So the question you're asking is, do they want this, or do they want that area up there?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say the shelter, especially because there's a separate project doing some work in that other side to get the river access for, the accessible kayak, canoe access.
How long are we thinking that we have to wait for something more to be done in the park, though?
Well,
I mean, when you
depends
do by phases, how much time generally before the next one?
Well, we've been moving pretty quickly on this recently. It was going to be every 2 years we were going to be doing stuff in there, and I think we've done something for the last 3 years. 4 years?
No, 2000 and 2022, so
Okay.
every 2 years.
But it seemed that we've done quite a lot in the time. And we've been allocating, I think, something like $500,000. So, it depends what the next phase of this looks like as to when we can do it. So if it's $1 million phase, it might be 4 years down the road before we can get to it. So I think it's important to understand what we want in that next phase and budget accordingly.
Right, because I guess my concern with just putting tons more money into this band area is how often is it going to be used? Would it be better to put something in there to actually get people in the park? Because right now, there's nothing drawing us into that park. So would we be better off using the money? I mean, I get and understand expanding it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't. But if we're not doing anything with it right now, then maybe it would be better to allocate money into something that we can actually use and get people excited about being there, and then you go back and finish. Because there is something there.
To your point, I think Danielle's starting to pull together some programming for down there for a couple of performance things and some children's events.
Yes, a lot of people have inquired about concerts and movies in the park. So I think it's important to the residents at this point.
But do we have enough for movies in the park for what's already there? Because some people are going to bring their lawn chairs, some people can just sit on the grass. So I'm just wondering, do we have enough for that?
The things I'm planning for at least this summer are going to have like the inflatables, so there'll be other things for kids and such to do, and food trucks and those types of things. But I see what you're saying with like a park or something.
And I think when we've done it before, people have, when we did movies in the park before, I think people did bring their own rugs and their chairs, and they came down and sat there on the grass there, and some people used the stone blocks for sitting on and stuff. So I think, was it hundreds of people? There's probably maybe 100 people there at one of the events, but I think that getting people there to enjoy something like that is going to bring the traffic to this area. I think if we can get some programming going on there, it makes people aware of it, and that will be the draw. So that's what I'm thinking that we're trying to achieve down there. And I think this is a good area to do it. I think there's more people inquiring about weddings and stuff down there.
Yes. There's a few weddings this summer there.
Okay.
I think your Heritage Day this year, this past August, there was probably 300 people there for the fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you have this concert that's out here, to get it built on, you can't have it there. There's nothing there. A band basically of the caliber that we've had here for the last couple of years, you'd have to rent a tent to have it down there because there's no shelter.
Right.
No place for the band.
So could we focus on doing a shelter and making a nice shelter and not worry about extending the seating yet?
Yep.
Because I understand the shelter. So if we're going to do it, like the ideas that you showed, some of them are just really simple, and others have all the lighting and everything in it. And it seems like if we're going to do it, then let's do it right. Let's get the lighting in there. It's going to cost more, so do we have to? How great do we think the need is to extend seating?
I think if you build your shelter, most bands have lighting. They bring it with them. They have all lighting food that comes with them. So I think you could get by without
The lighting.
The one stage that you had with all the lights up in it. When you get into the audio and all that other stuff, you're probably, I have no idea, but you're probably adding quite a bit of cost.
I think
Okay.
the one that's in Champlin is very nice, and I don't think it's got like any crazy bells and whistles. It just serves the purpose. I think that's what she's saying, is just to have something that just kind of, unless we think we need lighting, but I think if it's to serve that purpose, and then to extend on that, I think adding the playground, artificial turf, that type of stuff. I'm not saying we have to do everything like what Champlin did, but there's a lot of really cool draws to that area. And I don't know where we're at with wanting to bring in revenue off this or et cetera, but I'm assuming Champlin brings in a decent amount of revenue from all the things they have going. Thursday night, Saturday night, and other nights, with what they've got going with Cullen's and Elm Creek Brewing and all those different places that are there. And they're obviously, I'm assuming that the city is getting a percentage of that or a dollar, whatever it may be, nothing.
Cullen's rents that space from the city. They pay to rent that space. Yep. I talked
Yeah,
to the manager.
and
there.
I'm pretty sure Elm Creek is paying
Yep.
to be there as well. So it's a revenue source. So my thought is that we can do more things once we know we've got more revenue coming. So as we look at this, there's a plan for, like, here's how many nights are we going to be using in a year? If it's 10 nights a year and we think we're going to bring in $1,000 in revenue a night, what does that look like, and how many nights? Just start to plan out the next phases if it is going to be a revenue source for the city.
I think when it comes to lights, I think if you have a big band come in, they're going to have their own lights. But if we're going to run an event, like if Danielle wants to do something up there where it's going to be later in the evening, or we just want the lights up there, we may want the lights just for
basic lighting would be nice to have.
yeah, just for our event
Disco
that we
lighting.
want to run right
Right.
up there. That may not have like movies in the park. You may want to have that there just so someone get up and say thank you for coming. You can see them when it gets dark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think the committee has to decide what they want to do. I'm just saying there's times where we may want the lighting depending on the programming Danielle's got planned for this coming year.
I was gonna say exactly that. If our target audience is just big bands, then we forego lighting. But if we want it to be something the whole community could use, I don't have a lighting kit, but maybe my kid wants to play. I don't know, or a community event or something like you said that turn the lights on if it gets dark.
I mean, we did the medallion. That gets big. You could have a kickoff event there where you want the lights because it gets dark at 5 p.m. now, 4:30 certain times of the winter, right? So you want the kickoff there just to be able to say, thank you for coming out. Here's the first clue, so on and so forth, those kind of things. So I think as the city grows, and the question becomes, as Carrie said, do we just do it all right and do it now, or do we stage out the mini stage that is this piece, right? Where you just put the basics in now, but you build something that eventually you could add lighting to. And I don't know the answer, nor am I trying to convince you one or the other. Just provide thought.
I think it's kind of a consensus right now that the focus needs to be signage for people to know what's there, and shelter would be probably the first two. And then seeing where we're at
And the
bridge.
bridge.
in the bridge. And then I think some form of, it seemed like to me Champlin was a huge hit last year simply from you had music going and people still had things for their kids to do. So having some form of, whether it's the artificial turf area or the playground or something like that, so that you can think of all the people that are trying to entertain a bunch of 2 to 10-year-olds, and they had other things going on so they could still enjoy the music. I'm not saying this is part of this phase right now, but think of that as a step down the line. So when people come out for those nights and their kids can't sit still for the music or the movie or whatever it is, hey, go do that. And like I said, the Champlin thing's so genius because then they're getting the Cullens revenue. And, like, there's just a lot of things that are all, everyone's been to a Champlin Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't think there's anything they missed. It seems like they've got a really good mix of people are happy, people are entertained, there's revenue coming for everyone, everywhere. Like, so I'm not saying we need to copycat that, but I think to a lesser extent, obviously smaller town, but like, it just seems like they've really got it figured out there. And I think whatever we can do for kids to have them, it's something to do, so it's a full family package, because sometimes kids are just not going to sit still for whatever's happening.
One of the elements of the long-term master plan, and master plans are moving documents. I mean, it was the best idea at that time. We're talking 8 or 10 years ago. Obviously, it's changed to now for a variety of reasons. The idea of a playground on what to me is a special use park. So this was always slated to be the playground element. The shape of it has changed and the scale of it has changed. But having that over here is a long ways from a potential hub here with a ravine in the middle. So do we need to rethink that element? What I'm hearing you say is there needs to be something to keep the tots busy over on this side. I'm not sure how that fits with a potential future building or whatever might be generated in this area, but there are some, you don't need a 10,000 square foot area, you need a 4,000 square foot area. So there probably are some places we can put it, but what do you think about moving some of this closer to, and I'm hearing two different, I'm hearing Dave was advocating, I believe, for finishing off this area. John and Carrie, I think you were hinting that maybe something over here to draw people in the park, so I'm hearing a couple different things, so I want to make sure there's.
I don't think that
consensus.
the picnic shelter with charcoal grills area is as high of a priority.
Okay, maybe I misheard. So you think the shelter here is a higher priority?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, bridge feels like a necessity. Signage is a
Yeah.
necessity and a very nice to have. Looks good as all that traffic on River Road passes by.
Okay.
And then the shelter, I think, is just functionally, it helps get us, more we can do down there, bigger bands we can have comfortable there, et cetera.
Okay,
Yeah, and I'm good with the shelter too.
okay.
Yeah.
Let's call this
One
band shell,
concern,
because I'm confusing picnic shelter.
Oh,
with
sorry,
band
sure,
shell.
Sorry.
sure, yeah.
Just so that we're on the same page,
Over the
let's call this
stage.
Yeah,
Performance
shelter over
shelter.
performance, yeah.
performance area, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
over the stage.
Band
So,
shell.
one concern I would have with having the playground on the other side is if this is going to be a rental for weddings and everything. It's nice to have the separation because people can still use the park when a wedding's going on. But people aren't going to want to have their wedding there if everybody can be running at the park.
That's a
Like,
very
good point.
Very
right
valid
next to 'em.
point, yeah.
So I think that the ravine and everything,
Well, and then
It's
at that
better
point, it almost
separated.
makes, and I think this is where we probably got to before, because you made mention about, we do have overlook right up the hill that's now on the path, right? So you could say that this is the place that doesn't have the playground, it's an open play area. I think that's probably where we got to eventually.
Yeah, and River Hills is just through the,
Yep,
I mean, it's quite a ways. but
right.
you
No,
don't-
I'm just
you don't
saying,
need
you're
a
just gonna
playground.
miss out on some of that.
Yeah,
There's gonna be some things, but
okay,
Maybe something more passive, like there's those musical things along trails I see in various communities that don't even need a whole park, but it's like at kind of a trailhead near a parking lot, and kids will play with it while there's like a,
yeah, we had
up in
talked
Alexandria,
about
they do it
a
at the farmer's
progressive-
market.
We had talked about a progressive playground instead of a big, huge playground. That was one of the ideas we had talked about.
Paul, is that the place for a splash pad?
for what?
A splash pad?
I don't think so,
I
but it
think
could be.
It goes against
You
what
need
she's
a lot of
doing.
parking.
If you're doing wedding rentals, I think that's.
No, not over there, over on the other, on the west side.
Over here.
Oh,
I'm talking about the whole park, not
Yeah.
necessarily by the entertainment area. Is that Stevens Park a place for a splash pad?
It's big enough, as long
It's
as we
big
can
enough.
park it.
I think,
Because that's a,
I feel like that's something that should really go in the big community park.
but that community park realistically, it's 20 years old.
I know. But it'd be great with a splash pad.
And lighted pickleball courts.
Did you get the decision from us that you were looking for?
I'm hearing that you'd rather spend whatever money is left after the other four that we talked about in this area. I'm going to push back for Danielle to provide some more ideas about how often it's used, the size of the groups, and so as you're planning that, if you can help me understand, those needs, and because it relates to parking, it relates to lighting and power, and this one's a little bit complicated, right? The guts are there, but to do a structure and make it cool and have it fit with the area and be utilized for both the smaller, 3 or 4 piece band versus the 10-piece band, that's where the challenge is. What's there fits a 3-piece band, but it doesn't fit a 10 or 12 piece. So-
and maybe this is just gonna always be a 3-piece band. Maybe that's just what it is, rather than because we had talked about investing in doing all the additional stuff on the other side, but now you're going a lot more expensive. So maybe it's just we're gonna have it's just a smaller venue.
Yeah, and that's an operational decision more than a design decision. It's like, what type of events are going to be attracted and successful? It's a great view. I mean, we used to hold our project meetings during phase 1 at a picnic table under the spruce tree overlook. I mean, it's a great view. Okay. Real quickly, the bridge, that was just the section of what was looked at previously. The city council had gotten a sign design firm. That was the sign, prototypical park signage
Yeah.
in that package. I just copied that out of the PDF.
There's a whole signage hierarchy that we designed for the city.
I've seen it somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, there's one over by the Parkway coming in today, and then there's a whole set of things on this. So this is one of the, different size parks get a different size sign, so.
Yeah. And we had looked at gate design at one time. It's probably a double swing just because of the distance, and the weight. But the historic columns that used to have the jockeys on top now have lights on it, so those would remain, and the gates would just be able to block it off, except in an emergency or a
So
big
this
event.
is, you were looking at the gate for the original entrance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be the top.
Those are
version
two options
here.
for that gate right there, okay.
Okay.
And then for the bridge, looking at like a top view, it's pedestrian and vehicle traffic, right?
No.
No,
Pedestrian.
the Three
Just
Rivers
pedestrian.
Bridge is 14 foot wide, 10 foot.
Oh,
width.
right, this is, okay.
This is a smaller.
This is just the one by the river, okay,
pedestrian.
sure.
You know, a mower might be able to cross it,
Okay.
a smaller mower, but not.
That's right, I was thinking of the other one.
By the road.
That's
For the-
not Ione Gardens.
For those
but
gates,
it will do.
Paul, for those gates, would it be terribly more, I guess those are metal, it'd be terribly more expensive to put gates in that look like they belong on that fence line? That fence line is like an old white picket fence, right, that you'd see on a farm, and getting like something that fits that, and we keep thinking about keeping the rural feel of Dayton, what that looks like. That's a small little thing that, I don't know if we
It
can do
would
that
be
or
nice
not.
if it blended in.
Yeah, if it looked like white picket
It
fence.
doesn't have to be
gates.
perfect, but if you're going by at 55 and it doesn't
They're
catch your
gonna see
eye.
something brown and
We can look at that. It would have to be either wood or painted steel, because that PVC fencing has no strength.
No, yeah, I don't want.
Even if
PVC,
it's just
no.
approximate.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can look at it.
okay.
Ione Gardens. So there's history with this site. The developer put in a play area that was supposed to be an HOA run and paid for piece of play equipment.
Yeah, maintained.
And that's how it was built. And so no design standards, they did some interesting things. So when you look at the existing survey, there's an asphalt path, and then there's a strange concrete border, and then you have the playground. So the playground, the swing sets are there, all the paths are there. They're new, relatively new, they don't need to be redone per se, but it wouldn't be what I would recommend, be the city of Dayton standard. That said, there's some things that could go in this park. All the light green trees, they're all deciduous trees. Some of them are dead, the brown ones. Those were all put in also by the developer. But they didn't do any coniferous plantings at all. So there's some nice berming that Noah really didn't like because he didn't like mowing on it. But there's berming there. There's actually really good turf established. But we've talked about what could be next. There is room for a basketball court. This was part of the original park plan done for the developer, but we don't have the money allocated to be able to do that right now. But if you felt strongly that it needed to move up on the priority list, we would certainly implement that. So we started looking at, what could make the play area better? How could you keep it? It's basically a neighborhood park, but it's tot lot size. There's not going to be pickleball courts here. There's not going to be a ball field or a soccer area, but there is room for some additional seating opportunities. And we've heard that at multiple community input meetings or people that showed up a few months ago. They want someplace where they can sit and gather and talk to their friends or neighbors. I showed two different potential locations. You could do one or both or none of these, but I'm thinking, something like the top left where it's stone blocks and some limestone steppers, something much more human scale, than a concrete paved area with a shelter on it. There'd be some plantings around it, a tree to help shade it in this location. There's some trees right here, which is why that one's tucked there. At one time, this little bump was supposed to be a node of seating area, and the developer just didn't install it that way, but, you know, it could be a wider area. So, and then we talked about possibly adding irrigation, or wanting to add irrigation.
We will
for
be
this
adding
park.
irrigation now.
Is the current playground equipment structurally sound to meet city standards since the city's taking it over? Has someone already gone out and actually like looked at it?
I haven't looked at it closely. It's something that we could do. It probably is structurally sound because it's fairly new. Is it the type of equipment that we would buy? Probably not.
I'm not even suggesting replace equipment. I just want to make sure that if we're going to really invest money of any kind here, that we at least feel comfortable that it's not going to become a issue or
Yeah.
cause harm to others.
I don't think it will become an issue. I will go and do an inspection on it just to make sure, but
I think it's only 3 years old, right?
yeah.
So it's relatively new. It's just that next step down in the quality.
Well, I mean, clearly the builder cut some corners, so I just want to make sure that other corners were cut.
Right.
Yeah, that's more my concern.
Where are you proposing to have this sitting area on the map? By that
Yeah,
purple
it's a little
tree?
hard to see blocked out, but, you know, these would be stone benches or more fabricated benches. There's kind of the idea of a little retainage here. So everything is sloping from the screen right to left. So to build up a little bit of area for planting, I clustered some boulders or this type of rock to create a defined planting area that didn't have to be mowed, and then the seeding would happen around here.
Does the green
Okay,
on the
so-
top one represent a tree canopy?
Yeah, sorry, it kind of blocks out everything. So this is a great big tree.
So there'd be in the middle of that is the stump.
Right.
Yeah, kind of a lot of. I worry a little bit about the compaction on the roots if there's all that going on right on top of them. If that tree were to die, the shade's gone. For
Right.
the seating area. Just feel like you'd be sitting in looking at the tree, wouldn't you?
So this is a little different park than many of the last ones we've done. It's along the scale of Donahue Dells. You know, small little tot lot. It's actually a little bigger than that, but kind of that more intimate feel. I don't know that both seating areas are needed. I think you could do one or the other. They have $50,000 allocated for this one. I believe was the number you told me.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
How much of
Yeah.
that is for trees in the path?
No path.
The past.
Path's
Irrigation
already
and
Path goes all the way
these
up to
seating
Pioneer
areas.
Parkway already?
The paths are already through the park.
Okay.
So irrigation and seeding,
Yeah.
The irrigation will come from a separate fund.
so just
Oh,
seeding
it
then?
does?
Oh, sorry?
Irrigation comes from a separate fund?
Yeah, I won't be putting that on this because
Oh.
we don't have a lot of budget in here.
Okay. Well then, if you did one seating area and a scaled down basketball court, you're close.
What about the trees?
The tree is, what do we have, 1, 2, 3?
Next, we need some coniferous, right?
4 trees?
There's
You need some
18 trees
There's
plus.
like no shade.
Okay.
Great.
Call it- Yeah,
600
there's not enough to do everything,
$600 a tree.
at least. Trees have really gone crazy. $1,000 for deciduous overstory is
Is
not
that what?
uncommon.
Whoa, charge the neighbor like $350 for a pretty mature pine tree in the ground.
It's a good price.
Are they charging the city $600 for mature pine trees in the ground?
Do you?
We don't have to talk with them.
Change order.
So prioritization here would be, how important is the extra tree cover? One,
Well, could
0,
we-
1 or 2 seating areas, and interest in the basketball court.
It's such a small area, I would feel one seating area.
I
And you
agree.
counted 15 trees. Could we cut that in half and just kind of put it around the seating area in the playground versus filling in the dead area?
Or a shade structure that isn't a tree necessarily, maybe?
Yeah, that would work too.
I mean, I want more trees also, but like if we could compromise, then you
Yeah.
get some now, some shade now potentially.
I think
there
if you're
isn't
gonna
a-
push for the basketball court, you need the trees.
I was thinking in not focus on a basketball
Okay.
court at this time, and
No.
instead focus on making the existing play area somewhere that you could actually gather and be shaded potentially.
And I know some of the neighbours want to have some separation between the park and their property, so the probably on the top there, would really like to have some tree, and the one on the
So
bottom.
these and these probably a higher
Yeah.
priority than those three.
Yeah.
I agree.
That was my biggest concern with the basketball courts, because they're very close to those homes.
Yeah, and I feel
If there's gonna
like
be
try to
noise
do
there.
the play area well,
Yeah.
rather than eke a basketball court in.
Right.
I agree. My concern is the noise that close to the home, so that's why the trees help create a noise break.
And there's ways to do trees for $350 a piece. They're 3 to 4 foot instead of 5 to 6 feet, and
Yeah.
but they do grow. Coniferous trees grow relatively fast, but
And then so with the seating area, how you want to do all the stepping stones, paving and everything, how do limestone benches and stone compared to cost-wise compared to just putting in benches?
Yeah, how do they
Like
fit in?
prefabricated benches, like what are the cost
So-
differences?
yeah.
Benches can range from $800 up to whatever you want, depending on the material and the weight of the material that you're using, whether you want single benches or benches with a picnic table in the middle of them. You can get something at any price range there. The stone blocks.
Yeah, how much were the stone blocks from LC Stevens,
last
the
time.
infamous blocks?
Probably,
$700.
yeah,
Is that what they ended up being?
yeah.
So they're $150 cheaper than a bench.
That's
what I mean.
He said you can buy them at any price, though.
He said $850 up.
I said,
Stone,
$800.
stone blocks are $1,000 a piece,
They're
and
probably-
a good bench that you'd actually want to sit on
Sure.
is $2,200.
Yeah, the block is just a block. It's not a
Correct.
two in a table. But I was just thinking.
Very durable, not very comfortable. That's the reality. So if you were to do just one play, I would opt for this one because of how it has some existing trees, and then you're not looking into the southwest sun. So I would probably not do that one and leave this one undeveloped. So if you're telling me just one, my recommendation would be here.
That makes sense.
I think an actual bench, a good quality bench, is a lot more comfortable than a stone block. And we could do pavers, you could do concrete, you could do aggregate for that matter. I mean, there's different things that we could do on the surface. It just doesn't want to be mowed, and it has to be maintainable for Marty, so.
I don't recall if I mentioned them here, but there's these really cool benches that some other cities have that have like solar built in, so you can charge your phone or your laptop. It seems kind of silly, but
Those are
the more I looked
3,500.
into them, they seem pretty cool. What did you say?
I'm guessing, but those are probably, $3,000
And up.
or up, yeah.
They can go up. Like City of Buffalo and Elk River, I think each have a handful of them. They seem pretty neat. When you said benches, I thought of that. There's too much shade, of course, you don't get the solar. But,
yeah, exactly. You want shade.
Yeah.
but they would
Yeah,
provide
and we
shade
wouldn't-
because they would have the canopy is what would do the solar. So,
Oh,
and then they would
really?
be branded with City of Dayton or
Okay. I
Whatever.
guess I haven't seen those. So.
Some of those neighbors might like that. If it's
I mean,
close, so
it's-
they can pick up Wi-Fi and just work
I
it.
know.
Well, the Wi-Fi.
Why the kid
Honestly,
does
some of them
whatever.
have Wi-Fi, but that's something
Yeah.
that you'd plumb into it. So then
Yeah.
that would be like, okay, who's paying the internet bill for this thing and whatever.
Those two
but
neighbors real close, might just be able to pick up.
they
on
go
that.
from you can buy an umbrella that goes in a picnic bench and just has USB ports to full on like apparatus.
Yeah.
Again from 1,000 to 10,000, but.
Are there any other park amenities that you would
Trash
consider
bin.
in a neighborhood? What?
A trash bin,
Yeah.
dog waste
Yep.
as well. You're gonna have kids around, there's gonna be wrappers and juice boxes and string cheese.
So I'm hearing a preference for an actual prefab bench, more comfortable than stone blocks? Or did I not hear that?
I just was curious what the difference was in price, because I just don't know that this is where we want to put all of our funds.
We didn't really budget for this, Marty, right? This kind of thrown. I'm going to use a term thrown in our lap in
it's
essence of
landed
this
in-
one, so it's
yeah.
not like we had money set aside.
Right,
for
that's
this
why
big
I'm
deal.
wondering how much we really want to spend on it.
You don't have to put any in it.
That's true.
Valid.
Scott has a good point. The option could be we're going to do nothing. Doing nothing is always nothing.
Right.
Not
And
saying
I
want
understand
I'm
that,
just
but
saying it's
But
not.
it's only 50 grand. It's like we do nothing and we put the 50 grand towards LC. I mean,
Yeah, for some people, this is kind of their option without going out of their way. So I think to make it
Put a
up,
bench
up
in
to
there.
some level of a standard, I think it makes sense.
I
You know,
think
a-
it's been,
a
it's
seating
a
area.
city park now, we need to get it to a
Yeah.
standard that we're comfortable with. And
Yeah.
I do get a lot of calls from the neighborhood over there.
That's good
Yeah,
to
they
know.
were sold one thing and got something totally different, so there's a lot of disappointed people
That's
out
good to know.
there, so.
Those are
I
the same
do
people
think
that
we
vote
need
to
to
get
do
rid of the HOA,
something.
right?
They have to defund the HOA flag in their front yard.
Yeah, I think one of the developers, didn't want to put a HOA in there. They were going to go to do that in the first place, and then when they got to building it and stuff, they said, no, we're not going to do this as an HOA. And so that's how it ended up being part HOA and part not. And there's no way you can maintain that.
So it's not necessarily my recommendation, because I think we've heard from residents that they like the gathering areas, but you could just put a couple benches next to the trail and put a concrete pad so you didn't have to weed whip under it. You know, it's done all the time. Sorry, seating area, but yeah, it comes down to total dollars.
I think it's seating area, especially with the playground there, is
Yep.
a requirement, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think an attempt to shade goes a long way.
Yeah.
There were more than a handful of days this summer that made the difference between a park I was going to go to or not. You know, if I'm sitting there in the 100-degree sun, and then my kids, like, where do they have to go to get respite if they need a break? Like,
There's been a few days like that in January as well.
right? See, year round. I think it's one seating area with, you know, an attempt at shade would be beneficial.
That's all I have.
You got everything you need?
Yeah, there's some conversations we'll have to have about budget, but enough for tonight.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, John.
Item C, Dayton Parkway Neighborhood Trails, Conservation Parks. John and
Thank-
Martin.
Yeah,
Thank you,
John's
Mr.
running
Chair.
with that.
Do you- I'm assuming we probably don't have any visuals. at all?
No. I
Do we
don't
have the
any
packet
visuals
that
for
we
you.
can bring up on the screen?
Better talk to the- Where is it?
Well, I mean, just like the.
Oh, the parks packet.
Park packet. Oh, yeah.
So while we bring this up. So this is specific to, we refer to it as Southwest Dayton, and it's not the southwest quadrant of Dayton, it's just the southwest corner, southwest of Interstate 94. So in the comprehensive plan, we have a chapter on parks and trails, and there's a map that kind of plans out what we're thinking for future, long-term, 20 years of park facilities. And there's nothing that's for parks that's planned in Southwest Dayton. We do have 2 regional trails that are planned, so these are Three River Parks trails. And I'm going off of memory now, so Marty's going to correct me. So we have, in the Three Rivers Park system, we have Crowhasset, I'm going to say to my left, but on the west side, and then Elm Creek Park Reserve on the east side. So there's a Rush Creek Regional Trail that connects the two along through Southwest Dayton.
Page
Yep.
18, I think, has it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting close.
2 more.
So Rush Creek Trail there we go.
These are the
That-
trails, right?
One more down with the trails.
Yeah.
Or the other way.
That's a down thing.
Up one
What?
more. You're on 19, go to 18. It's got the regional trail. There you go. Then you have to flip it.
There we go. So Rush Creek Trail goes east-west, and then we have Diamond Creek Trail. that
Diamond Lake
goes
Regional
north-
Trail.
Diamond Lake Regional Trail that goes north and south. Rush Creek Trail follows the Rush Creek, so it's a corridor. None of it is built past Elm Creek, where you can see. But the general intent is to follow the creek corridor. Through the portion in Dayton, it the creek kind of functions more as an agricultural ditch. There's a large wetland complex and floodplain, but the general idea of what Three Rivers has asked for is to plan for a trailhead kind of in this general vicinity. Brockton is relatively the halfway point between the two regional parks. So you've got that as a commonality. The Diamond Lake North-South Trail, right now it's just a planned corridor. It does not follow a water body that goes north and south, so there's more options as far as what the connection is. But generally that would follow the Brockton corridor up until it gets to Dayton Parkway, and then it would follow Dayton Parkway across 94 and then up to French Lake, and then keep going north eventually up to pretty close to the village.
Yeah, and to be in the park.
Yeah. So there's a great opportunity to put in some type of a trailhead. The general or the typical trailhead that Three Rivers has is, I'm going to say, a parking lot of 10 to 15 parking stalls, a large "You Are Here" sign, and then some type of bathroom facility, whether it's portable toilets or compostable or flushable. So I am sure that Three Rivers will have a strong opinion of where that goes, but it's important to hear from the Park Commission if you guys have a preference or what input you have. So Danielle, if we go, I think one page up, maybe 2 pages up.
You're going to show the development?
There we go. Yep.
If you go the picture down, it's better.
So, I want to talk about the larger area. So, the larger area, you can see 94 there. We have 2 projects that are currently under review, both on the south side of Dayton Parkway. I'd get up to their point, but I want to stay close to the microphone. There we go. So on the east end, this is the Parkway neighborhood. What's planned right now is 630 units of apartments. This will be done in phases. Phase 1 is 180 units, so that is, assumably, if it's approved, construction would start in 2024 and probably, I'm going to take about a year to year and a half to construct. So this will be a multi-year phased process or project. On the west side, we have Diamond Creek Edition. So the land use is unknown at this time. So it could be apartments, it could be commercial, it could be anything other than industrial. But the point I want to make is that within this area, it's reasonable to believe that there's going to be over 1,000 residents that live in this triangle. And we have no parks facilities planned other than the 2 regional trails. It is likely that, I know with the Parkway project, the developer is planning on building a clubhouse and probably like a private or HOA maintained playground. But it's not a city park, it's specific for the residents in that development. I don't see, this is far away from anything else in Dayton as far as residential neighborhoods go. And so any park facility would be, I think, more for those residents than it would be for the larger community. But still there's a question of, do you see a need for something, and then what is that something? But again, the main question tonight is on a trailhead of, is there anything that jumps out to you or anything more that you would like other than just the basic 10 to 15 stall parking lot, a sign, and a bathroom?
So I think if you go to the last slide.
You asked 2 questions. As far as the build out, do we ever see use for a park down there? I would say grab the land if it's offered, or make it a part of the bidding thing for a possible park in the future, or for a park, sorry. And then for the trailhead question with the 15 parking spots and a restroom, are we footing the bill for all that?
This is Three Rivers.
And usually the
Oh,
trail,
yeah, then we want a
the
big
orange
old
line is the
complex.
trail.
Yes. I mean, if we went beyond the minimum, we would probably be paying for that extra. But.
The question too is where, are we talking about where or just what? The trail looks like.
Because, yeah, when you ask if we want to go above and beyond, can you give me more on that? Like, what would be above and beyond? It seems like that's enough for a trailhead, but when
That
you
is enough
say
for a trailhead.
above and beyond,
It's-
what else are you thinking?
So this area, much of this area is wetland and floodplain. It's difficult to build. It's not ideal for, I believe it's been used as a sod field for some time.
Yeah.
Probably not the best for a soccer field, but, as far as going more than just the minimum, if there's any interest in like interpretive signage that's related to, natural areas, I guess what I would suggest personally is that if there's some type of a loop trail that goes around for the residents, if you have some type of sign of, here's what a Blandings turtle looks like, it's endangered.
I
But-
hope they don't see a Blandings turtle if we're building over there.
The signage is fairly basic, but,
This developer's gonna put in all that in, why not ask him? He's gonna do it all. It's for his residents.
Well, Three Rivers Park District's gonna do it.
Yeah.
That part of it, yes, but like the trail.
oh, for the
some of
loop trail,
trails in
yeah.
the park and everything, he's gonna do all that, and he's gonna put in the playground.
You say here, we don't need a decision now, not
No.
till April or May, so.
Correct. So this, if nothing else, this is just something to think about. I'm going to say the trailhead, the more we've thought about it, there are options, they're all complicated. The first complication is just the amount of floodplain that there is to work with, what high ground that there is that's not designated or planned for a building is planned for stormwater ponds. So any high ground is pretty, I'm going to say pretty valuable.
Then it seems like just your normal, basic trailhead is probably the best.
Yep.
Yep. So as we work on plans, we'll come up with some different options as far as the locations go. Things to think about is crossing Dayton Parkway. If it's crossing the road, I think Marty and I have talked about the idea that it could be a tunnel or it could be a bridge. A lot of this depends on the safety of Dayton Parkway and what the traffic is expected under.
So are we supposed to be trying to find a place for this trailhead? Is that part of what you're asking?
gonna
Or are you
guess-
going to bring us like a couple of options
I'm
to look
thinking
at?
we can work on a few options, but I'm also thinking Three Rivers will likely have a strong opinion either
Yeah,
way.
they know where the trail's gonna, where they want it to go, and they know how they want to acquire land.
And they're kind of the experts in trail designs.
There's one parcel in the area the city owns, it looks like. The rest of it's developers and private parties,
Yep,
at least along what looks like the creek on the map.
yep.
So I'm not seeing any, we need to have it here, in my opinion.
Sure, okay. I guess I would ask, for your experience of using trailheads or being on the trails, of what experience have you had there, and anything that you wish were there or is missing or you thought was really cool?
Nice to have a map and something about why it's there. And this one, it's not there because it was a specific area so much, but it's along the creek. So yeah, something I think basic.
Mileage.
I was gonna say
Mileage.
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 If there's trail, yeah.
If there's a reason why it's there or something it's named after or whatever, but I think those are the main three
Catherine.
probably.
Scan this to get the Dayton app and find out where you are in the trail.
Yeah, if we can have like a little
QR code.
other Dayton parks or some kind of plug for our
Yeah.
own recs, that'd be cool. Parks and Rec.
How far is this from the city line? It's very close, isn't it? Like it's
Yes,
Just a
so
little.
Yep,
On our ninth
that's the
page.
corner.
Is Brockton the defining line, man?
Yes.
Okay. And then that becomes Rogers, or that becomes Corcoran?
This is
Maple Grove.
That's Rogers there, and
Rogers.
Corcoran's down
Maple
below.
Grove.
That's Maple Grove.
Maple Grove.
Yeah.
And Corcoran's just west, or south and west?
Corcoran's
I
down
can't-
here, I think, right?
Yes, I can't think of it, if it's a Four Corners,
I don't know if this is Corcoran or this
me
is.
see.
I'm just trying to find it on my phone.
Right.
And I think it is. The address is
Corcoran's
Yeah.
very close, because Pheasant Acres Golf Course is like less than a mile.
That property
from
on the
there.
bottom
That's
left
in
corner is Corcoran's address.
Yes, this is Rogers, Corcoran, Maple Grove, Dayton. So
Wow, so it is a Four Corners thing.
yeah.
That's kind of cool.
That'd be, I mean,
Put that
you
on
know,
the sign.
I was gonna say, if you want to put that on the trail, call it the Four Corners Trailhead. I mean,
Yeah.
There's a road that runs through there, though. Stand here and you can be on all
They'll,
four
they'll
areas.
stop for people.
All the little.
Right, in that area. Sure they will.
right in the middle of the-
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Thank you for sharing.
okay,
Yeah,
yep,
cool.
so as
Appreciate
we
it.
come up with ideas, we'll bring it back to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, and item D, the Dayton Open House.
Yes, so I'm planning the open house for the city on May 22nd. It's a Wednesday night. It will be from 5 to 7. And I'm going to be inviting councils and commissions, if they want to participate, to have a table or something set up to interact with the residents. So just something I would invite you to do if you would like to.
Approximate
Is
time
this-
frame, like time of the day that it goes on.
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
is this similar to like the Public Works deal last
Yep,
year? Or
that's-
that's what it is? Okay.
Yep.
That was fantastic, but we went and the kids thought it was out of this world.
It was a good event.
It was
so
very,
should
very
be
well
another
done.
good-
Yeah.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
22nd.
Will there be hot dogs? Paul needs to know.
Yes.
And lemonade.
Is Vic grilling again?
Vic will be the hot dog man.
All right, I'm there.
And people from the U to tell us how to grow our plants for the year. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
They did a really nice job.
they're coming again. Education's a great thing.
Is that the?
It was the agriculture team.
the Master Gardeners.
The University of Minnesota Turf Extension.
Oh, the turf folk. Okay, cool.
The guy that was speaking last year was he used to be a superintendent of St. Cloud Country Club. So like 20 years of growing that type of grass and then taking it to neighborhoods. And that was cool, just to someone that's done that for a long time.
I have some swag we can give out. Tree care handbooks I got from the U of M extension that I forgot to bring last year.
Yeah.
Like 200-300 of them or something. Some in
Perfect.
Spanish as well.
Do you
So if
want us
any
to
of
do
you-
a
if-
table as a
That's
group?
what I'm
Or
inviting you to do. If you would,
I think it'd be
if you'd
cool.
like to, I think it would be a great thing for.
It'd be a good opportunity to interact with people and get their thoughts
Ooh,
and
I'm actually
Yeah,
free
kinda
that
see
Wednesday.
what's
feedback
happening.
from residents.
I don't have lions.
and we're open to bring our children and let them cause whatever potential problems.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
All the hot dogs
Public
they
Works
can
will take
eat.
care of them. They took care of my kids last year, and the
There should be
sandbox
some
was
fun
great.
stuff.
Say, we'll make sure
Maybe.
Officer McAlpine's nearby.
Yes. So that's about all.
Cool. Thank you. And then item E, next Park Commission meeting scheduled for TBD. Are we to be picking a date, I presume?
Yeah, I think so.
Or are you giving us a
Super
month off?
Tuesday or something on the next one.
Thursday.
Oh, right, because we have.
I think that's what it was.
What's the next one, Marty?
Huh?
What's the 5th?
It's on the election over
Yeah,
the
isn't it Super
Oh,
Tuesday
the
election?
presidential
stuff?
primary.
Yeah.
Do we have anything we need to discuss?
I can always find stuff for you to discuss. Whether
I
you
said
want to
need.
that park meeting or the Brayburn Trails would be the 21st.
Yeah. So
Oh,
we could
so we would have the results or feedback from that.
Yeah.
Do you want to move to the? You said it's on the 21st. Do you want to move to the 26th then?
No, that's when I think the neighborhood meeting is, right?
That's when we were thinking of doing the Brayburn Trails meeting.
So
is
that's
the
what we would
21st.
potentially have to discuss at the next meeting.
So that's on February 21st, yeah.
21st. Right.
So
And we would meet March 5th?
Normal,
In
but we
theory.
can't
Because
it's
of
election day, so
So
the
March 12th?
city folks are
Got
all
it.
tied up already.
March 12th is a council meeting.
March.
It doesn't have to be a Tuesday necessarily.
April 2nd?
Unless that's what works for folks.
Oh, do you want to just move to like Monday the 4th then? Or Wednesday the 6th?
Dave wants it in April.
I'm just throwing it out there.
When
Right,
does?
but do
when does-
you,
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry.
No.
You're right, though, we do need to go
Well,
back to
I'm
the
just
council
saying,
with
we can't
solutions.
move it clear till April if we
You're right.
have to make
That's what I was gonna
choices
get at.
for the next park, because you have to get bids out. So,
So we should try to meet.
we should try to meet
Agreed.
as close to the city.
Wednesday the 6th?
I can't do that, but if others could, if we have a quorum, we're good. But the first and third Wednesdays I can't
We could
do.
do-
Or
what
the
about-
Thursday the 7th?
What about Monday the 4th? Is that out totally?
I could do
Mondays are
Monday
good
the
for me.
4th.
I'm out that evening.
Okay. Dave, I'm looking at you.
Well, I can be here. I mean, it's my Fun Day Monday pizza night, but I'll make it work.
Okay, Dave, bring pizza. Sounds good.
Totino's it is for everybody. Matt, what do you want in yours?
I'll take buffalo chicken
You're
Totino's
getting
pizza rolls,
cheese.
please. Oh.
So, what about the 6th then? Everybody available 6th?
I'm not.
That's a,
Well, you guys have.
First and third Wednesdays I
4th or
can't do.
6th?
Or
Thursday nights are fire trainings,
or
right?
Thursday the
Thursday, do
7th?
Thursday
Fire.
We
nights.
can't do that. That's
Oh, 'cause it's-
planning.
It's easier to
commission.
miss a fire training, so I'm not running that.
Yeah,
night.
and Thursday's the planning commission, but Thursday's
Yeah.
also fire trainings.
Yeah, it says Monday or Wednesday if you want to do that week.
Miss one of us either way. Yeah, just because I had planned on the 5th. But
We don't know about Doug. If
So we
there's a
need
day
at
that
least
works
3
better
of
for
you
Doug.
to commit to coming, because we don't know if Doug will be there, because he's not here tonight. So between the 4 of you, you need to pick a date that 3 of you can make.
Yeah.
So how many of you can make the 4th?
I can make the 4th.
How many of you can make the 6th? Well, you have the same, either way, it doesn't matter.
Well,
Then someone just has to pick a
Let's
date.
pick Monday because I'm the co-chair, and then
Perfect.
I'd be running it if Doug wasn't here.
Okay.
okay.
Well
Great.
adjudicated, Matt.
Well,
6th it
facilitate
is.
decision
Or 4th
making.
it is.
It's almost like I do it for a living.
All right, Monday, March 4th.
6:30. E square.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? All right, at 8:31, I will adjourn the meeting.
Happy
Nice
times where I'm
work.
calling.